I made a really poor decision in my early 20s when I started dating an older man and he put cocaine in front of me. He was 11 years older than me. I was 20 years old. I made a poor decision and I started using cocaine. Well, fast forward 3 years, I hit complete rock bottom. The thing is what people have to understand is your ego is trying to protect you. If Novak Djokovic, who is arguably one of the greatest athletes we have ever seen on the planet, has to look himself in the mirror and give himself a pep talk, what does that tell you about our mindset and our ego?
Welcome to EMG Transformations with Dan Stoll. Each episode will empower you to ignite your inner fire and provide methods to maximize your mental and physical performance. Buckle up and get ready to spark your transformation with Nova Fusion.
3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome to EMG Transformations. Today we have a special treat with the sweet and spicy Sandee Sgarlata. Sandee is a two-time award-winning author, certified life coach, professional speaker, retired U.S. national and international figure skating coach, a gold medalist in ice dancing, a Reiki master teacher, and has spent the past 20 years helping people create lasting changes in their lives. She just does it all here, and as a thought leader, Sandee has over 30 years of corporate experience, has owned multiple businesses, and is known for her authenticity in leading and motivating teams. She is also the host of the Happiness Solved podcast and managing director for the Los Angeles Tribune Global Podcast Network. I'm so excited to gift you guys with a dose of happiness and inspiration today. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandee.
Thank you. Thank you. My doorbell rang and my dog started going berserk, so I muted it real quick. So hopefully that will, I apologize to the listeners if you hear that. But thank you so much for having me, Dan. It's just such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we've kicked it off in a group community. We've met in person a couple times now, and the energy is just, I love your energy, and it just feels like we're in alignment. So I'm just so
Oh,
happy
for
that we're
sure.
having this conversation and continue to grow with you as well. So I'm just
Oh,
excited.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to the next event with Craig's. We'll see. We'll see what he pops up with next, but
Yeah, I'm sure we'll come up with something.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's dive into this conversation now, and I like to really spark things off with, your backstory and especially some of those experiences and struggles even that shaped you into who you are today.
Hmm. How much time do we have, Dan? So when you've been on the planet for almost 6 decades, it comes with all sorts of, everyone's life is a roller coaster. Mine is no exception. I feel like it's just different peaks and valleys. And, I think, for me, it really started 2 weeks before my 13th birthday. My older brother was tragically died when he was serving in the U.S. Army. And well, as tragic as it was, during that time frame, it was 1978, and nobody talked about things like that. We're at a point now in 2024 where mental health is discussed more openly. I think we still have a lot of work to do with that. Back then, no, it was like a big, absolutely not. Like, you didn't seek therapy. You didn't, like, I remember coming back to school, not one person said a word to me. The guidance counselors didn't pull me in their office and, are you okay? Like, there was zero conversation. And so as a child, that told me that, nobody really cared, right? Because I didn't have any sort of support with the multitude of emotions that comes with that, at such a young age. The flip side of it was that my mom went into a deep depression for nearly 10 years. And so I essentially was on my own from that point forward. And so while everything was okay, I made a really poor decision in my early 20s when I started dating an older man and he put cocaine in front of me. And because my brother had a lot of drugs in his system when he died, I was like, I'm never doing drugs. And it was just a very weak moment for me. And I was looked up to this older man, right? He was 11 years older than me. I was 20 years old. And I made a poor decision and I started using cocaine. Well, fast forward 3 years, I hit complete rock bottom. And, I always like to say things happen for you, not to you. And that was the best thing that could have happened for me because it put me on this trajectory that I've been on for the past 34 years. It was January of 1990. And so I've been on this trajectory for 34 years now and, wouldn't change a thing. Now, I became a complete self-help junkie. I love having these types of conversations, and that's why I started my podcast 3 years ago, because I want to talk to people. I want to talk to experts that know more about a topic than I do, and I want to ask them questions and I want to learn about it. Because no matter how long, even though, yeah, I've been on this journey 34 years, I don't even think you're 34 years old yet, right? But it doesn't matter. I can learn from you, right? Because your life experiences will help me and vice versa. And that's why this community that we're in is so important, because there's so much knowledge and there's so many things that we need to learn just to help us cope, because, life happens when we're busy making other plans. And you just never know when, you're going to get thrown another curveball, so that's kind of my backstory, that in a lump sum.
Yeah. I mean,
In a nutshell.
yeah. Yeah, you really, I mean, in that time, like there's a lot going on at once, and it's just nobody's talking about it, probably don't have the tools that you have now to cope and manage
Right.
those situations. So I'm curious, did you go to college during that time? And if so, like what was that like navigating through those personal struggles?
So for me, because I was a competitive ice skater, all I ever wanted to do was to perform in the ice capades. So I graduated from high school in 1983. And 2 weeks after my high school graduation, I get a letter in the mail from the ice capade saying, congratulations, you're on a waiting list. And I was like, well, what do I do now? Like all my friends were going to college. College was never even in my realm of reality. Both of my parents were high school dropouts. My mother had her first baby at the age of 16. That was in the 50s. And it was pretty common, back then to do that. And so my stepfather, who raised me since I was 3 years old, my biological father died when I was 18 months old. But he just kept telling me, just take all the secretarial classes so you can be a secretary. I'm like, okay. So I actually did think, well, okay, well, maybe I should go to college. And because I'd never thought about it, I didn't know what I wanted to go to college for. So I enrolled in a fashion institute in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Was 17. I got there when I was 17, turned 18 in October. Big mistake. You don't send a 17-year-old girl to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to go to college, because I ended up just on the beach every day and ended up dropping out and came back home. So that was my college experience. It was not a very good one because, as a matter of fact, oddly enough, all of my roommates got involved with this group of men that were cocaine dealers.
Hmm.
And I refused to do it. And it caused a big rift with my roommates. So I was miserable because they were not speaking to me because I wouldn't participate in their, partying and things like that. Now, I ended up getting my college degree 35 years after I graduated from high school. So I got my bachelor's degree in business management with a certificate in human resources management in 2019 was when I finished school finally.
Well,
So it's never
congratulations.
too late.
Yeah,
Right?
congratulations on finishing it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it became a personal, and the thing is I didn't know this, but I was a really good student. Like,
Mm.
I graduated like magna cum laude and, just, I loved it. I mean, and there's still a part of me that wants to go back and get my master's. I'm like, you know what? Like, why? Like, don't spend any more money. You don't need your master's degree, but I enjoy college. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting because I heard you talk about like you're a self-help junkie now too, and like it just seems like you have this like this energy to do stuff. It's like it doesn't, I mean, it does matter what it is, but like you have this like this drive within you to get your hands dirty and just do it. And that brings me to a question of like, do we actually change or do we redirect our efforts? Because you went from, you know, going on and doing some drugs, but then you flipped it around completely, and now you're this self-help junkie that's just positively impacting so many people. So with that, like, what's your idea of that change and that redirection of energy when it comes to like just like getting that clarity, or like what was that like for you?
So it was definitely a process. And my ex-husband, we were engaged when all of this went down in January of 1990. And because he had some people in his that he worked with, that had gone through similar experiences, I agreed to do an outpatient rehab program. And then I made an agreement that I would go to a 12-step program. And so the 12-step program was just incredible. So that was my first introduction to spirituality. And those 12 steps were just incredible. And they work for a reason, and you fill in the blank, like the step one is we admitted our lives were unmanageable. And see, now I'm forgetting it because it's been so many years. We agreed that our lives were unmanageable and that, we had to take control of our lives, or, something like that. But that's where it all stems from. It stems from the unmanageability that whatever it is causing you, whether it's, you're working out too much, you're a workaholic, your life becomes unmanageable because of whatever it is that you're abusing.
Mm.
It doesn't, people can abuse many different things. It doesn't have to be drugs. It can, you know, working too much. There's all sorts of things. So that was my first introduction. And then I really wanted to, I kept hearing people say, there's miracles all around us. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant. And once I experienced for the first time that miracle, it just opens up a whole window, and you realize that God, source, Buddha, Allah, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is real, and it's supporting you, and it wants you to be successful, and it wants to help you. You just have to be open to seeing the different signs. And so to get back to your question, yes, I do think people can change. It's just, it's all about the journey that you go on, right? And it's a practice every single day. I have lived this way every single day of my life for the past 34 years. And it's a practice, and I am not perfect. And yes, I get angry. And yes, I lose my patience. And yes, I get frustrated. It's normal to experience all of those range of emotions. We're human. We are supposed to experience it. And I challenge anybody out there, and I love having a conversation with these people who are like, oh, I don't get angry. I don't. Like, yeah, you may not get angry, but there's thoughts that you still have thoughts, right? It's what you do with the thoughts once they come into your consciousness. And so it's really more about making that commitment to yourself every single day. We have a choice, and you have to decide every single day which way you're going to go. Because yeah, curveballs happen. Yeah, we get stressed. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, and it's upsetting, and because it's scary, right? You almost got in a car accident, and you're supposed to react in a certain way. And then what do you do after it? What do you do next with that information? Are you going to let it piss you off all day? Because I lived that life for a very long time, where somebody would cut me off in traffic and I'd be talking about it for 2 weeks.
Right.
Right. And, so it's just about making that choice. Okay, let me feel it. Let me feel it. Let me experience it. And then let's move on and choose to shift your consciousness in a different direction.
I
Yeah.
love that. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like control what you can control, and don't react but respond. And those are two
Yeah.
things that really helped me get out of my victim mentality when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And, every day was just pain and why did this happen to me? And, what did I do to deserve this? And
Right.
I'm just having all these negative emotions. And then,
That's
God
right.
forbid, something else happens outside of my regular day to day that just, adds another layer to it. And it's like, oh my God, like it's just the world's over.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I can relate with that so much. And it wasn't until I started diving into those ancient texts and realizing that,
Mhm.
oh, maybe none of this is good or bad, and I'm just putting this perception on it.
That's right.
It's like
That's right.
everything is just happening, and I'm the one that says it's good or bad. And that was
That's
just
right.
enlightening for me to realize that, oh, I have a choice to think positive and go in this new route and maybe do some more proactive things that can help my situation. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Well, it's so true. And the thing is, and I always encourage people when something happens, yes, things do happen to you, of course, right? It's just when things happen to you, you want to experience the full range of emotions. You want to process it because you don't want to shove it down and pretend it didn't happen because it did happen and it's real. And so you want to experience those emotions and take as long as you need. There's still times when my Achilles heel has always been because I had like a lot of mean girls in high school, and that's still an Achilles heel. And I had a friend of mine who I just absolutely adored, and she really hurt my feelings, and I ruminated over that for a couple of weeks, and that's okay. It took me a few weeks. It didn't control my life. It didn't ruin things, but it was still there. Again, I go back to it's a daily practice. I had to practice forgiving every single day, and then it finally did dissipate. Because when things happen to you, ultimately by working through those feelings and the emotions, you will eventually get to a point where you say, "This happened for me, not to me," and that's when you're free. That's when you're able to free yourself of that space that has been taking up that real estate that's been taking up space in your head, the negativity, the resentment, the bitterness, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. And on that theme of like this happened for me, and, like talking about choosing happiness, I'm curious, like, was there an event that happened that put you down this path and made you decide, like, oh, every day I'm deciding to choose happiness. I'm going to have a good day. Or was it just this kind of decision that, I just want to have a better life and I want to keep going in this direction and it feels good? Like, were there any of those cases for you?
so I think it's just been a combination over the years because I wasn't this, you know, conscious, I it took me a long time to get to the place. Sorry for stuttering like that, but it took me a while to get to the place where I was consciously choosing consciousness over ego. Okay. And it's still something that I choose on a daily basis. So it's just been a combination of many, many years. I've studied a lot of different religions. Um, I was a diehard student of the Course in Miracles for a solid 12 years. That was life changing for me because it just resonated with me, right? The text just resonated with me. And that's what I encourage people to do. I call myself a recovering Catholic simply because it doesn't resonate with me. Is it bad? No. It's just neutral to me now, right? And you just want to gravitate toward what feels right for you. And so for me, it's just over the years, all the studying and the books that I've read and the conferences I've been to and the courses I've taken, it's just been, and I'm still evolving and growing. It's just different levels. Like we're like an onion, and they say you peel away, and that's it. I'm still peeling the layers, and I will be peeling the layers away until I take my last breath, because we're very complicated beings, and there's years and years of trauma. And while I've dealt with most of my childhood trauma, every now and then it still pops up, and you're like, okay, I thought I dealt with that. Let's peel some more layers away.
Yeah.
So it's just a journey. It's not a destination. And I think that I always kind of cringe when people say the pursuit of happiness. There's no pursuit of happiness. It's a choice. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And I think that's the mission that I've been on with my podcast and my books and everything, is like just letting people know, like, this is a choice. Happiness is a choice, and the choice is yours. So choose wisely.
Yeah. I learned that in high school. Actually, there was this class, it was this blow off class, assumingly so, and it was like this
Right.
like life development class, like just something
That's
you.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was, I mean, thinking about it now, it's great, but like as a high schooler, I'm like, yes, like there's another hour I can just
Easy,
talk about.
easy A, right?
Exactly, yeah. But one of the things, and my teacher, she was such a sweet lady. She was, uh, I want to say she was like in her late 70s, and she had cancer, but she still,
Mhm.
continued to teach and just bring this positivity every day. And one of the things was she said that when you wake up, you can choose to have a good or bad day, like the
Mhm.
moment you wake up. And that's something I've never heard before. Like you wake up to the alarm clock and you just go on with your day. If something bad happens, you have a bad day. And like that, it just spirals out. So like that was my mindset at that time. And so the fact that she like opened me up to that,
Yeah,
I always go back to that. And that's like a lifelong lesson that I never saw coming. But now I even take it up a notch. It's like every day is a new life. Like, how can I make the most of today? Like, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring if we
that's
even
right.
got tomorrow.
That's
So
right.
I'm going to make sure that this conversation, I'm going to treat it like it's my last conversation and with every other conversation I have. And so just having that mindset, it helps you make the most out of life, make the most out of these relationships and conversations. And like that's a day worth living. And so when you have
Yeah.
like every day like that versus just running on autopilot every day, it's like there's no
Mhm.
comparison. So why not choose happiness, choose to live this fulfilled life, and maybe read your book to help you out too. So, there's all these resources available. So
Well, and that's just what's great about podcasting is it's free.
yes.
It's free. It's a free way to get education and learn and grow. And it doesn't cost you a penny. It just takes in 45 minutes, an hour out of your day, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I really wanted to touch on was you have this Hawaiian healing poem that kind of like brings you back to a reset, but also just like purifies your mind in a sense. So I'd
Mhm.
love you to break that down for someone hearing it for the first time and maybe share like how it's helped you in the process as well.
Absolutely. It's called Ho'oponopono. And I was reintroduced to it, oddly enough, when I had the book. I read it years ago, downloaded it again. Something just told me that I needed to read this book again. Actually, it was the audio version, and I started listening to it when my husband and I were on a plane to Hawaii,
Mm.
and this was last year. And it's an ancient Hawaiian healing practice, and it's four phrases that you say. You say, "I love you," "I'm sorry," "Please forgive me," "Thank you." So you're saying the first part is "I love you," and you can. I don't, from what I understand, and because I was privileged to interview Dr. Joe Vitale on my podcast, and he's the one that brought this to the forefront. And the order that you say it in doesn't really matter so much. I like to say, I love you first, because what you're doing is you're acknowledging the divine. You're acknowledging God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, the universe. So you're acknowledging your love. And then you say, "I'm sorry." And this is where it trips a lot of people up, because they're like, "Well, I didn't do anything wrong."
Yeah.
Well, you had a negative thought. You chose to have a negative thought. So that is kind of, a mistake or whatever. It doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. It's just, you're just acknowledging that you did something that was more an ego instead of consciousness, right? So you're saying, "I'm sorry." And then you say, "Please forgive me." Self-explanatory. You're asking for forgiveness. And then you're saying thank you, because by saying thank you, you're expressing your gratitude
Mm.
to divinity. So what it does is, so I first started using it because you asked me how it's helped me. I first started using it because I still have some episodes of PTSD that stems back from, I'm sure, my childhood. My biological father died at 18 months old. My brother died when I was 12, going on 13. And so there was that's pretty significant trauma for a child. And so I still would have periods of anxiety. So that's when I first started really using it. And I would just start saying, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I would just start repeating it in your mind over and over and over. And what I noticed I haven't had an anxiety attack in over 18 months, and it lasted less than 30 seconds because of Ho'oponopono. And what happens with me is, and like I said, I haven't had one in a long time, because when these thoughts come into my consciousness, I use the Ho'oponopono prayer, and it eliminates it right away. But what happens with me is I get these thoughts that somebody's going to die. Okay. And because now I have a son, he's 23 years old now. It's usually him, right? Because that's like every mother's worst nightmare. And so it'll come into my consciousness, and I just start repeating that prayer over and over and over. What it is said that it can really do is it helps clear generational trauma, even within your DNA code. And so I like to just start my day with that prayer, because it sets the tone for the day. But throughout the day, anytime I have a negative thought or something that could potentially send me into anxiety, I just start saying that prayer, and it erases it. It's gone. And the more you practice it, the less, we can, the great thing about this work, Dan, is that you can change your subconscious mind. And so by doing things like practicing Ho'oponopono, you're helping to rewire those neurons that fire in your brain. And so it's just another tool, one of many, many tools out there. I resonated with it. I touched on this earlier about miracles, and we have so many miracles if you're open to seeing them. To me, that was a miracle that I forgot what this book, Zero Limits, was about. Totally forgot about it. I was like, oh, I just need to check it out again. I start listening to it, and he's talking about Hawaii. Here I am flying to Hawaii, spent 2 weeks in Hawaii listening to this book. And then I bought his course. And what's great about Joe Vitale is he's got these courses that are like $19, they're very, very inexpensive, where you can dive into it even further than what the book gives. And so I just spent 2 weeks in Hawaii, just living and breathing that. And the thing about this work is you have to keep practicing it every single day, and that's why a lot of, self-help, personal development coaches and writers and authors and podcasters, sometimes people give us a bad rap. And it's only because you spend a couple $1,000s, you go to a conference, you hear some great information, you come home and you forget about it and you don't apply it. Like this work, you have to apply it to your life. You have to practice it. And if you practice it every single day and just commit to 90 days, 90 days is nothing. 90 days flies by like that. Yeah. So whatever it is that you choose, because there's so many modalities, just make a commitment to yourself that you're going to practice this every day for 90 days. And I'm telling you, you will experience miracles in your lives, and your life will change for sure. It's going to happen.
Well, you just gave me a new 90-day challenge over here. Yeah, I want to put this to action and, just get that positivity. And, whenever something does happen, like it's something that you can go back to. And I love how you said it's a tool, because I love having a toolkit for life and adversity. And that's a perfect tool to whenever a situation where you're feeling down or negative or just, upset. I think that's like a good one. Like when you're just feeling down, like maybe you're not so angry, but like just, you're in the blues now. So like I feel like that's a great go-to tool in your toolkit to just whip out, say it a few times, really feel it, visualize. And for you, it's like even more powerful, I feel like, because well, I'll ask this as a question. When you do the poem, does it kind of connect you back to Hawaii? Because that's when, you were really learning, I don't want to say learning it for the first time, but you really dove into it again. So I would feel like that those memories and those feelings would come back. It's like the connection and the emotion, they're all linked.
Maybe a little bit. I've been meditating pretty much on a daily basis. There was a few years when I had a lot going on in my life where I kind of got away from the core of who I am. And life isn't a straight line. We're always going to have detours and whatnot. But I learned a modality of meditation back in 2007. My meditation guru is Stephen Sadlier. He runs the Self Awareness Institute, and he now lives in Hawaii full time. He used to be in Laguna Beach. He has trained hundreds of thousands of people over the last 40 years, and it's a discipline of I'm gonna mess up the name, but there's a lot of different disciplines of meditation, and it doesn't matter which one you choose. Just you know, they're all beneficial. This particular one I really liked because he dumbed it down and made it so simple. But what began to happen when you start a meditation practice, what happens is you have like everyone's experience is very different. For me, I really connect with Archangel Michael. So Michael is always with me. And I'm always seeing, and it's a spiral. I see a violet, like a violet light. If you can imagine those things you snap people wear at concerts, almost like that, but it's violet, and it's a swirl that starts enveloping my whole body and just swirls around me. And then and you walk yourself through this. And then I see like a golden white light that comes down right into your thalamus, which is the most powerful part of your brain. And then I visualize the light running through me. So because I practice it for so many years, I can go to that space very quickly. And so when I close my eyes and I'm saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, that all just starts happening.
Mm.
And it's just a very calming place for me. And when you can even spend 5 minutes a day or 2 minutes a day, whatever time you have, what happens is you just become so much more aware and more in tune, not only with who you are, but all of a sudden I call it like you get downloads, like all of a sudden ideas pop into your head, creative ideas, and like, oh, this is happening. Like I've had an idea for ever since I published my book to have a whole series of books, but I was waiting for the right time. And that right time happened a week ago. And within 1 week, I've got a massive book deal with at least a dozen books that are going to be released over the next few years. Because I've tapped into my intuition, and it was like, now's the time. And like that, it's happened. And I attribute that to meditation because it's like, okay, it's time. Now it's time to have that conversation. And I had that conversation with one person, and boom, 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 boom. It's like a snowball effect. And all of a sudden I've got this massive company behind me publishing a whole series of books.
That is incredible. Like that
Yeah.
deserves
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you. Thank you.
That is
Yeah.
because like I know that's a big thing, like to create this dream in your head and then bring it to life, and then you don't know how it's going to happen, but the divine download came and you acted on it. That's the most important thing. Like you heard it, but then you went and acted on it, and that's what got you the results that you're seeing. And like I'm a visual person, and when you just described all that, like that's just like magic in my, like I can see the
Yeah.
swirl coming, and I can see it coming down and through you, and like that's just like such a purifying like moment that we can all have if we
Oh,
incorporate
yeah.
poem. And so like it sounds so divine and magical and like this one of a kind experience, but everyone listening, we can all have our one of a kind unique experiences, and that's what like the coolest thing about it is to me.
Yeah. And I have it all the time. I can tap into that anytime I want. It's there. I'm not unique. I've learned how to do this.
Yeah. So has meditation always been like a key component of your life? And I'm curious, like especially with like high performance and peak performance, like managing the mind, is that something that has always been like incorporated together?
it was this real struggle. Probably my very, very closest friend, we coached skating together. So we've been friends almost 35 years now. It was like her mission in life to get me to meditate. And so I was introduced to it probably 35 years ago when I met her, and she would have these little classes, and I'd come over and I'm just like, I am high performing. I am type A to the extreme. I go, 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 go. One of my other friends calls me a thoroughbred. That's her nickname. I'm a thoroughbred, she calls me. Um, and so it wasn't until I took Stephen Sadler's course in 2007, and she was the one that she was like, no, you're going to do this. Okay. And I did. She goes, just commit to it for 12 weeks. Biggest, best decision I ever made. Incredible. And it was like he was doing this remotely over the phone back in 2007, and he's in California, and there were people all over the world.
Wow.
I ended up going into a mastermind with him, which was oddly enough, Mark Victor Hansen was on the call with me every week on this mastermind. And I just met him. Well, the second time I met him, but we both spoke at the same conference 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. So it was great to kind of reconnect with him again. But it was really that made the difference for me, because it's so hard when it was just, I resisted and resisted because my mind is just going, like I'm clearly, have attention deficit, but for me, it's a superpower, and I've learned how to use it to my advantage. And so it's very healthy for me to just sit and learn how to just quiet the mind, because you're never going to, and I'll just tell you just really quickly, what Stephen would always say, and this is why I resonated with his course, is that you're never going to shut down your thoughts. It's not about blanking those thoughts out. It's about focusing your consciousness into one thing. And he goes, imagine there's a television on and it's in the other room, and you hear the television in the other room, but you're not paying attention to it. So that's kind of why I like his form of meditation, because it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. Those thoughts are going to be going. But instead, you acknowledge it. Okay, I hear that thought, and you direct your thoughts to, for me, focusing on the light coming through. And that's what I just focus on. So it's just a matter of training. It's training yourself like anything. Just like, I had to practice, I play tennis. I have to go out and I practice my swings, right? I'm not, it's a practice. It's like anything. And meditation is no different, practicing Ho'oponopono, whatever it is, you just have to practice it.
It's all a skill, like going to the gym and getting
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could do one set of reps and have this go away from under my arms, and do some tricep, things. And boy, my tricep would be looking amazing. No, I got to work on that every day.
Right. Yeah. And so another thing that you mentioned the ego a couple times, and now you're combining it with the type A high performer. I'm like, oh, I know where we're going now. So I'm wondering, like, has the meditation helped you put that ego to the back seat and get that balance, or like, where's the ego standpoint on that and the meditation?
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think meditation definitely helps with that. I recently have been getting more into the quantum field and learning more about that. And the thing is what people have to understand is your ego is trying to protect you. All right. Our ego is there as a protection mechanism. And when you think back to 2000 years ago, the fight or flight, right? That your ego was protecting you because you were either trying to find food to eat, you were trying to protect yourself from being eaten, or, it was true survival, right? Nowadays, yeah, sure, your ego would say, don't go down that dark alley, yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, I won't, right? It's just that, oh, I've got, I'm going to launch a podcast. And then your ego starts going, who are you to launch a podcast? That you start feeling inferior. I'm not good enough, imposter syndrome, all of those things. That's your ego because it thinks it's protecting you because it doesn't want to see you fail.
Right.
All right. So you just have to be aware of that. It's just, there's only two states of being. You're either in consciousness or you're in ego. There's no in between. So if you're not feeling in consciousness, which is gratitude, love, joy, peace, all of those high vibrational frequency states of being, that's consciousness. If you're not up there, you're in ego. And so what I started doing, and this has worked for me, is I still use the Ho'oponopono, but lately I've been doing this a little bit more than Ho'oponopono. I just say to myself, consciousness in, deep breath, ego out. And I'll do this exercise, consciousness in, ego out, consciousness in, ego out. And of course, focusing on everything you have to be grateful for. Gratitude is the quickest way to raise your consciousness, is just by focusing on everything you have to be grateful for. So, there's just so many little tools that we have at our disposal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know?
always like to lead with an attitude of gratitude myself. Like that's the best way to live your life.
Yeah,
You know, even for the bad things, because again, life happens to us or for us, not to us. And all of these things, you don't know what you're going to do with it right now. You don't know why it happened, but maybe in a month you will. Maybe in 6 months you will. And
yeah,
so these things unfold, and it's like, oh, now I understand. But if you just had this negative mindset the whole time, you're never going to see the positive. And that's why I have duality, the yin yang, in my logo, because it doesn't matter
yeah,
what is happening. Like we both have been through really tough times, but we both now
that's right.
looking back is like some of the best things that could have ever happened to us. And if you were to say that, go back in time and tell us to that back then, we'd be like, are you kidding me? This is the worst thing that could ever happen. Like my life is over. Like for me, I could
Right,
see a future. So
right.
it's crazy how things work out, but having that trust, having that faith, that growth mindset, even like I love just having that simple analogy with that. Like there's always room for improvement, there's always room for growth. That helps me look at the optimistic side of things and find those golden opportunities, even if they are a needle in the haystack. Like just because it's hard to find doesn't mean we shouldn't not go looking for it.
Yeah. So, so true. So, so true. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
since
I love that.
we're diving into, your secrets of peak performance over here now, I'm curious, like, what have you seen to be the biggest block in people that, kind of get in the way from that next level that we all have?
It's one word, confidence.
Thought you were gonna say fear, but I like that.
Well, of course, but lack of confidence is fear,
True, true.
you know? What is fear? False evidence appearing real. And so I always kind of feel like the opposite of fear is love. It's just when you're in that fearful state, it's your confidence. And I do work with some very elite athletes. And I always like to use this example with my clients because it applies to everything, no matter what you're doing. So again, I'm a huge tennis fan. I watch probably an unhealthy amount of live tennis on television, and I'm so excited that the Australian Open is happening on January 14th. Because I'm just like,
It's coming.
yay! So I believe it was either Wimbledon or the French Open, and it was 2022. Novak Djokovic, he's in the Grand Slam final, lost the first two sets. He takes a break because you're allowed to take a bathroom break. He leaves the court, comes back on the court, proceeds to win the next three sets. Because remember, with men, it's 5 sets. It's your best out of 5. So you have to win. So he lost the 2. So it was like, okay, if he's going to win, it's going to be a 5-setter. And this is a 4-hour match, right? This is incredible. Playing at the highest level. He ends up winning after, he wins the 5 sets, wins the Grand Slam title, which I think may have been his 20th at that time, because he now has 23 titles. It's ridiculously crazy. So the announcer says, so you left, you took a bathroom break. Well, what did you do when you were on that break? He goes, well, I had to relieve myself. He goes, but then I looked in the mirror and I had to give myself a pep talk. And that's what made the difference for him. And I point that out to people because if Novak Djokovic, who is arguably one of the greatest athletes we have ever seen on the planet, because you can't compare him to a football player because tennis players are playing 11 months out of the year, multiple time zones in a different hotel or Airbnb every single week. They get off the court at midnight. They have 4 more hours of post-workout. They get to bed at 5 in the morning and then have to play again at 6 o'clock that night. So arguably, he is the greatest athlete of all time. What he has accomplished is unprecedented. And you can't compare it to basketball players or football players or golfers or, anybody else. If Novak Djokovic has to look himself in the mirror and give himself a pep talk, what does that tell you about our mindset and our ego?
Yeah.
It was the confidence. He had to give himself a pep talk because he was lacking in confidence. Oh my God, I just lost 2 sets. I got to get back out there and play another 2-3 hours because each set is about an hour. I got to go play and I got to step up my game. And he had to give himself a pep talk. That is peak performance. And recognizing that he had it within himself and he knew that he could do this. But he had to give himself a little pep talk because nobody can do it for you. It has to come from in here. It has to come from your heart. Didn't matter. His coaches would be like, you got this, you got this. And he'd be like, yeah, right, I got it. But if you don't really believe in yourself and have that confidence, it's not going to happen. And you can use that at any level, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, it all starts with within because on the other side, we could have all these people that, want to see us lose. And that can get into our head, especially if you're competing at a high level in sports like that. And so you have to be your number one cheerleader at that point. You have to give yourself the best pep talk. You can't rely on the coach to pump you up. You have to pump you up. You have to know what pumps you up too, because you could be doing the wrong things to pump you up and then you're not getting the results that you're capable of getting. So what pumps me up and what pumps you up might be 2 different things.
That's right.
Know that you can go to that and you don't have to rely on external factors or chance or luck. You can have control of how you're going to perform. Not to say that things aren't going to go your way or things might mess up. That just happens. But you can put yourself in the best position to succeed and get to the place where you want to go. So I love that. And it all start with us.
Well, the thing is success is 80% mindset, 20% tactics. So yeah, whatever your sport you're playing or whatever it is you're doing, you've got the tactics you need to do. But if the space between your ears isn't in the right frame of mind, you're not going to succeed because you're going to self-sabotage. And a lot of that self-sabotage comes from that you don't believe in yourself. You don't have that confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it goes with me playing basketball. A simple analogy here is when I'm missing a bunch of shots, that can get into my confidence. But when I see the ball go in once, it's okay, look out, guys. I'm shooting it now. We're going. So it's that little switch. And that's the thing. It's a domino effect. This small thing can lead to a big change later on if you keep on staying consistent with it. So,
yeah.
I love all of this, and I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but we
could easily.
Yeah. So I got 2 more questions here before we wrap up. One of them I'm actually pretty interested on. Let's talk about you now and some of your non-negotiable daily habits and routines that keep you on fire.
Well, I like to start out my day in gratitude. And I meditate pretty much every morning. And what I do is I just don't get out of bed. So I usually will wake up and I will lay in bed for probably 30 minutes. I envision the day that I'm creating. I think about what I have to do and how, what are the important things that I need to do. And also seeing that positive outcome and that, and envisioning everything just going, smoothly and whatnot. Breath work is really starting your day with breath work. I've recently just added this because I was listening to, or I think it was a guest I was interviewing, and the reason so many elderly people die in their sleep is because between the hours of 2 and 5 in the morning, you're getting very, very little oxygen through your bloodstream. So it's really important to start your day with some deep breathing. And even if you do, experts say if you can do it for 8 minutes, that's great. 8 minutes is hard to get to. I'm not even there. I usually, if I can just count to 10 and do 10 deep breaths, like that's good for me. Looking in the mirror, and I look in the mirror and I say, I love you. And the other non-negotiables is hydrate. I know I've got my, you see me on my podcast, I've got my, purple and blue, and I'm just, hydrate. And I use electrolytes, very low sugar, not sugar-free, just low sugar electrolytes, to keep my body rehydrated. So those are just some of the non-negotiables, but I do other things. I started a few months ago. I get liquid IVs twice a month. And I do a red light therapy after I have an IV. And with the IVs, I usually get like a B complex. There's a supplement called NAC, which is a very detoxifying. And I tell you, the past few months, I have never looked younger, felt better, just by adding those two things twice a month into my regimen. And the red light therapy, the benefits are just, and with your Crohn's disease, you'd be like a perfect candidate for that because it really heals from a cellular level.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about the red light, but not the details like that. So I'm gonna have to check it out. And yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman has I think a 2-hour podcast, which I haven't listened to it yet, but it's on my list, where he dives deep into red light therapy. And I'm a huge, like, I've seen so many amazing results from it. And yeah, so I'm starting to now like talk about that more too, because it's so beneficial for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm always like looking to incorporate more things into my routine, and I love how you started out with visualization and like setting up that perfect day almost, like exactly how you want
Mhm.
it to go. Not saying it's gonna go that way, but you have this
Yeah.
intention of what, it should be and what you want it to be. And you're gonna have so much more clarity throughout the day when you're making decisions because you already have that intention set in place and you've
Right.
already felt it how it's supposed to feel. So like I love doing that, and I typically do it at night. So like flipping it and doing it in the morning to like set the day up. I like that. So I'm gonna steal a book from steal a page from your book there.
Well, here, let me take it one step further.
Okay.
Why don't you do it at night? Think about the day that you want to have tomorrow. That's, I do that as well when I remember to, because sometimes I end up falling asleep watching TV, and that's a bad habit, but I love it. It's just one of my indulgences where I like to fall asleep watching TV. So I try to do that at night. But if you can think about that at night and then you fall asleep, it's going to be even more powerful. And then do it again in the morning,
Yeah,
because
double.
it's going to be really set more into your subconscious mind if you think about it before you go to sleep. So
Yeah.
do both.
Yeah, do both. Yeah, and for everyone listening, you guys can do both too. If I got to do it, you guys got to do it. Awesome. So I got one last question before we wrap things up here. Um, what's been one of the biggest or greatest lessons in your life or pieces of advice received that has made the biggest impact on you?
Mm, there's so many. And when I get asked this question, I always come back to one thing. The book that I published in 2009 was a novel for young adults. I finished the second book. It was supposed to be a series of 5 books. I finished the second book in 2010, and it was never published. So at some point, I am going to finish it, and I'm going to put them all together and make it, just republish it and update it. So that's in the works at some point. But the theme of that book was forgive for peace.
Mm.
And I had it on my license plate for 10 years, and it was 4GV for PC. And it was funny because some people say, forgive your PC. And they're like, oh, forgive for peace. And I'm like, yeah, I even got a speeding ticket years ago. And the police officer goes, I hope you forgive me. And he was like, hee, 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 and he started laughing.
That's funny.
But that's the thing. And I think like that was the biggest thing when I really deeply, deeply understood the power of forgiveness. And if you're not if you're feeling anything but peace in your heart, there's someone or something you need to forgive. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be yourself. Because we find it easier to forgive others and much harder to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
So forgive for peace. It's just like a little saying that, is easy to remember. Forgive for peace, forgive for peace. So
Yeah. It's like taking that accountability almost and like owning it and like, okay, this happened. I forgive it. I forgive you. I forgive myself even.
forgive myself.
Yeah.
We need to forgive ourselves for the way we react at certain times.
Yes.
Forgive yourself. It goes back to Ho'oponopono. Forgive yourself for all the negative thoughts you're thinking,
Yes.
right?
That's
Like, it's okay. Just forgive yourself. Like, let
yeah.
it go.
That's a great final nugget for everyone here. Like, forgive yourself. It's okay if 2023 wasn't the best year. Like, forgive yourself. This is a new year and you're listening to this podcast. You already got some momentum. Yeah, this is the end of the podcast. Like, you're really here and you're diving into it. You're investing in yourself. And, that's something to be proud of. So, I'm here supporting everyone listening. If you guys are going through anything, like, let me know. I'm always here to help. And just give yourself that grace because we all need it sometimes. And, I certainly do myself. So it's something that we can all use a little bit more of and just appreciate ourselves a little bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, of course. So before you head out, like let us know how we can support you. I'll put both links to your books, Happiness Solved and The Change in the show notes below. So it's easy for everyone to grab a copy. But if you got anything else going on in your world, please let us know.
Yeah, I'm launching a exclusive membership site as part of my podcast where the members will get additional content. They will get guided meditations, very short little episodes that are going to be under 10 minutes long, probably even under 5 minutes long, where I'm talking about diving into very specific topics. So it's just additional content that my listeners will have access to. And that can be found at happinesssolved.supercast.com.
Awesome.
So it's on Supercast. Yeah. The membership
Love
site.
that you're extending the podcast and adding
I'm
more and more to it.
Extending it out. Yeah.
You're an innovator out here. So Sandee, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today and being vulnerable to share your story. Your kindness, perseverance, and positivity shine hope on others, and the world is a brighter and better place because of you. You are inspiring, and I know that your best is yet to come, and I'm so honored to have crossed paths with you and to call you a friend. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Dan, thank you. Thank you. And I can't wait to see you sometime this year. I'm sure it'll be sometime in the next few months.
I'm sure it will be.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
Transform your health and life with the Nova Fusion 21-day Wellness and Resilience Challenge. We're bringing the heat with daily inspiration, education, downloadable resources, and challenges to get and stay on fire. You're not going to want to miss this epic experience with us as we stack massive momentum, develop strong bonds, and create lasting lifestyle changes together. It's time for you to get in the room, ask advice from gladiator guest speakers, realize your untapped potential, and spark your transformation. The insights, the powerful tools, the lessons, the challenges in this program will truly transform your life. I believe in these practices so much that I guarantee results or your money back so you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So what are you waiting for? I would love to invite you to our next challenge where we will discover the world's best wellness and resilience practices for staying mentally and physically fit for a lifetime. It's everything you need to get an unstoppable edge against the competition, and there are limited spots available. Let's spark your transformation together. I'm excited to see you and grow with you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of EMG Transformations. You never know how one valuable insight can make such a big impact. Please leave a 5-star review if this episode had a positive impact on you. And don't be shy to screenshot and share episodes on social that you found helpful so we can spread the message and make the world a better place. You never know who may need to hear and the impact it has on them too. We're only scratching the surface. There's so much more to learn. Subscribe and stick around to manage stress, improve your health, and create lasting lifestyle changes. We'll see you next time on EMG Transformations.